you got two people observing. All right. Okay, the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development Housing Trust Fund Work Group meeting has now commenced. It's July 21st at 11:35. This is a virtual meeting. We ask you mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. They only use the chat function to request to speak. Also, to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio. So we have 5 commissioners. How many commissioners are the total now? Is it 12? So we don't have a quorum here, do we? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So roll call. I'll just announce who's here. So we got Kenny Wong, Jay Young, Mindy Bernstein, Alan Salat. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
But it's close enough. I know who you mean.
And me, I'm Jim Toffel, and then Allison Miller is our HCD rep. So the first agenda item is the call to the audience. This is limited to 3 minutes per speaker and a total of 10 minutes in total. All speakers that must share their name to be recorded in the meeting minutes. Remember, the call to the audience may not result in discussion with the members of CEHD. No legal action may take place during the call to the audience, and speakers may not be disruptive. CHD members may only respond to criticism and requests that be placed on future agenda items for discussion. Members of the audience may still participate on agenda items as per the bylaws of CEHD. So is there anybody who would like to speak during the call to the audience? Please just raise your hand.
Jim, if I could just interrupt for a second. The two people that are here, Drew Schaefer and Brenda Munoz, are lawyers that I know and work with all the time. And my interest in how we use the Housing Trust Fund centers on something we call right to counsel. So the idea is that we would have the city eventually, if it works, agree to have provide attorneys for every eviction defendant in the city of Tucson or Pima County. Other municipalities, other states do this. It's not, we wouldn't be unique. We'd be the first in Arizona. As it turns out, the city of Phoenix is looking at this also. And so I invited Drew and Brenda to this meeting because they have expertise and an abiding interest in this area that they want to share. So I don't know if they're going to be limited to the time period you just said. They can talk about this for a while. And of course, I don't want to take up the entire meeting on this one topic, but I just want to make sure you understand that's why they're here, because I asked them to be here.
Okay. Okay. So Drew, go ahead. We're gonna go ahead and give you the floor. And please, if we could keep it to the 3 minutes, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And I'll just say very briefly, grateful for the opportunity to participate as an audience member and to observe this meeting. All of us at the William E. Morris Institute for Justice, including Brenda Munoz Furnish, myself, our colleague MJ Simpson, who could not join today, really appreciate the work that you're doing, the leadership and vision that this group has in Tucson. I have observed at least one past meeting, I think at Jay's invitation a couple of years ago, and appreciate the interest in the work that you're doing to look at options to level the playing field for vulnerable renters in the Tucson community. And I'll go on mute and just say that, you know, we do have, as Alan mentioned, a strong historical interest in the topic of evictions in Arizona and how the eviction system works in Arizona. And we have a strong belief and are part of a national movement called the Right to Counsel movement to bring the right to counsel solution to as many places as we can to ensure that our legal system and eviction system operates as a justice system. So we are available to answer questions if any members of the commission may have questions about what our right to counsel is. And of course, would welcome an opportunity to summarize our thoughts in writing and submit them to the group for consideration at some point at an appropriate time. With that, thank you just for the opportunity to observe today.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Brenda, did you want to speak?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My colleague Drew summed up the Right to Counsel movement very well. I don't think I have anything to add. Just know that the William E. Morris Institute for Justice is we are a good local organization who can help out with implementing right to counsel. We've been doing this stuff for many, many years. So we just wanted to be here to listen, let everyone know that we have this knowledge, and thank you for letting us attend.
Okay. Okay, let's thank you very much, Brenda. So our next agenda item is the Housing Trust Fund discussion. So Allison, do you mind kind of getting us kicked off? And let's talk about just so we have a basis of understanding, let's talk about kind of the history of the Housing Trust Fund, how it was established, where those funds came from, and what the amounts are, and how those funds were historically used, or what the original intent was.
Sure. I'm not going to be able to give as like detailed of a presentation as Anne, but I would make sure to have everyone sort of have up, and I can share my screen, have up the memo that was shared a couple meetings ago, and with these materials. Sorry, I have way too many.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I read most all of everything that was sent to review ahead of time. So
I think it's fine to just sort of, okay, yeah. I'll share that link later, but just to kick things off, right? Recent mayor and council action earlier this year, we needed to sort of move authority for managing the city's existing housing trust fund to the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. So the thing sort of in establishing CEHC, that was the intent, and it happened this past year. So the fund currently has about $320,000 in it, collected through a real estate transfer fee established through the Gadsden Development Agreement, and the repayment of mortgage loans. So that's how much money we're talking about right now, and it's so currently not really growing at any appreciable amount. So the conversation today and for the future, you all get to decide kind of the process that you'd like to establish for making this decision. But we really want this group to identify, create a recommendation to the full commission, which then would recommend to mayor and council how we'd like to use that approximately $320,000, as well as any other recommendations you have for the Housing Trust Fund moving forward, and what you guys would like to see out of the city's Housing Trust Fund. So in that memo that was shared, it was dated June 5th, on the Housing Trust Fund. I'll put the link in the chat again. Outlines sort of the first section is kind of talking about, you know, a more general policies that you could adopt for a housing trust fund. That, right, you could fund anything from kind of affordable housing development, rental assistance, those types of things. And then the second section is sort of some more immediate proposals, just draft options, so that you guys have something to react to in terms of ways to spend the current $320,000 that's in front of you. So a little bit more of the pressing need at the moment is how do we want to allocate those $320,000? You have heard through a few different commission meetings, some presentations from, say Ward 3, and you've heard about the Ward 2 house program for ways that they are sort of proposing spending some of this money. Right. Alan also invited, oh, Ray is here. Ray, promote to panelist. Yay. Okay, I'm gonna wait just a second. Sorry, Ray, I just saw you. Welcome. So I think there's a few different ideas on the table. I think most of them revolve around kind of shorter term emergency housing needs, things like landlord engagement, eviction prevention, those types of right to counsel things. So this is a discussion for you all of how do you want to kind of go about making this decision. I think some of those folks would love to come back and provide some presentations to you about their kind of pitch again. I sort of envision that this group might need to meet a couple more times to deliberate, and that this is your opportunity to think through your process and ask for any additional information, presentations that you feel like you need to make your final recommendation. Questions?
I don't have any. Does anybody have any questions? So I think a little bit of history as well on this topic. So the email that Allison sent out to everybody that gave some of the history of the Housing Trust Fund in terms of the commission. So this was a recommendation that was made to mayor and council at the end of 2022. I'm just going to read this real quick. So we had 4 items that we had recommended. So in line with the HAST plan, item 9.1 was to reinstate the City of Tucson's Housing Trust Fund as a supplementary source of financing on projects to fill funding gaps. So the ask was, I think, $2 million a year was what we were hoping would get injected into the Housing Trust Fund. And then, so they approved it, but then really what we had was home funds instead. So we received home funds from HUD every year. And that's what each year when there were projects that came up, applied for the home funds, we allocated up to $500,000 per project. You guys, I think, remember a lot of those. So I think part of the discussion here is, I guess, is the home funds. And my understanding, Allison, is a lot of those home funds are going to be going away going forward. Is that true from HUD? Wasn't that part of what was cut from the latest tax bill?
My latest understanding is that home is, so it's currently in the budget negotiations. It hasn't been officially cut yet, but that both the president's budget and the Congress's budget did cut home funds.
100% or 100%?
I feel like 75% sure that is the case. Yeah. Which, my understanding is that the Senate budget usually is a little bit more conservative in terms of keeping things how they are. So we're definitely watching that as it kind of goes through the budget.
Yeah. So, I guess when I personally think about this topic, I kind of go back to that original recommendation of, we need to have a recurring source of funding. I think $325,000 really isn't enough to move the needle on the development side. And we're talking about a one-time kind of injection into something here, right? You know, long term, it would be best if we could identify a source to replenish the housing trust fund each year and use that as a way of filling gaps. So, you know, the options, you know, I think we've got basically 4 or 5 options here total. So option 1 would be to use it as a gap source on a development project. The option 2 would be rental assistance. Option 3 would be to provide some sort of services for homeless.
Yeah, that option is a option B in that memo is mimicking Maricopa's threshold program, which is a centralized landlord engagement program.
Is that the link that you just posted?
Mm-hmm. On page, well, wouldn't it be nice if this had page numbers? 6 out of 9 is where those scenarios start. And I'll say, just for clarity, right, option A, there is rental assistance. The gap funding on a development project isn't in this memo, but it is something you guys can decide to do with the funding.
Okay. So, okay, yeah, let's
And Ray has their hand up.
so there's 3 options on this. I'm not sure I agree with the options though.
That's okay.
And then I think the other option that that Alan was talking about was legal support. For foreclosure cases.
Jim, I think one of the other focuses was prevention.
Isn't that rental assistance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So rental assistance is option A.
Okay.
So option B is mimic Maricopa County's threshold program. So I guess, guys, let's start with kind of just going through the pros and cons on these options.
Can I speak before we do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you, Jim, for that emphasis on like also needing to have a reliable source of funding. Like we're making decisions for this moment, but I love that thinking of the longer term. And Allison for that really excellent synthesis in the beginning. Appreciate your work on that. I would love to talk through some of the metric too of how we're making the decision. Because I'd love to think beyond these options as well. Like for me, one of my priorities would be to ensure that people who are the lowest income and the lowest asset holders benefit the most from this, which is where I would sometimes, you know, lean towards one of the things like rental assistance, but also I would put on my list of priorities something that's leading to a longer term sustainability. So something like supporting low income people who are buying property collectively or something. Like something, I'd love to see this money, since there is so little, be doing something a little bit out of the box rather than only replicating what we already have had happening. And then maybe another thing I would put on that list is as you're bringing into the table here, Jim, of like what funding has been cut, is like maybe having that as a metric too, is like, was somebody already counting on this funding that's gotten cut too, could be another consideration. But I wonder if we could take a few minutes to talk about process and how we might make a decision, including then how, like if we made a metric beforehand and then are inviting, is it Ward 3 had a proposal for rental assistance funding that they were asking of this from this funding, but would love to have some coherence before other groups coming in to give their input.
Okay. So from a process perspective, Does anybody have feedback or thoughts on how we should build consensus around this and arrive at a recommendation for the commission?
Jim, I have a thought. Go ahead, Mindy.
No, go ahead, Jay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of with Ray here. I mean, I think that for me, this is an opportunity to prove that some of these programs can work and work well. So I want to make sure that, you know, we are tracking the metrics and that, you know, we know how these programs are going to work. Because I think that's another big piece of it for me is that, you know, understanding these different options and how they would actually work, how they would roll out, how quickly money would get out the door. You know, those kinds of things are important to me because I think, you know, there may theoretically be an idea that's better than the others, but if for whatever reason it's hard to get it started and get money out the door for, you know, whatever bureaucratic reasons, then I would tend to, you know, not want to go that route just because of the urgency of the situation. So I do think that, you know, having some data that we can look at, and then also, you know, again, how are we measuring the effectiveness of these programs so that we can say, okay, we spent $100,000 on eviction prevention and we targeted the lowest income folks, like what Ray was saying, you know, that we can say it was very successful because of X, Y, and Z, or this is not a good program because of X, Y, and Z, so that we know once this money is gone and we do eventually get sustainable funding that we, you know, can just kind of plug right back in as opposed to being like, well, we spent all that money and then, well, we don't know how it went or, you know, anything like that. So, you know, I don't know what that means specifically about the process, but I guess really kind of the information that we get about how these different programs would work is going to be critical, I think, for me to, you know, make a decision about what I think is the best use of this limited funding.
Kenny? Or Mindy, I think you were going to speak first and then we'll go Kenny.
Yeah, I always like to hear what other people have to say first. I for me, I think I've been thinking about this for since we decided to have the ad hoc, and I was just wondering if we could do like a think tank and just freely discuss the different ideas that we've come up with, so that we kind of know where each other are at in their interests and their focus of where the money should go. That's what was my recommendation to start us off with, but I'm happy to just listen.
Kenny?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I wanted to echo a couple of points of you know, making sure we're leaving room for innovation and you know, new options for the table. And you know, the house idea can be the first example of those, you know, more innovative grassroots ideas coming out. Um, uh, yeah, and I definitely think our recommendations, maybe a good starting point is how do we build that support for long-term funding and renewal of resources? I think if we start with the contours of the program before we get to the specific details of what to fund, that'll give us get us thinking about how to build support and ensure that there is, you know, more funding to come. I think it's really easy to get into the details of okay, how is this going to go out? But I think we are going to need political support to ensure that there's funding there. You know, I think in the full commission we've talked a bit about like affordable housing bonds. You know, coordinating with the county um, and the national low income housing resources that Allison had shared previously too. I think that really helps set the kind of the landscape of what do these funds look like around the country, what kinds of you know, mechanisms they have. So you know, we've got a bit of evidence and support there too. Um, So I guess my key points are, you know, perhaps starting with how do we build the best support for revolving resources through use of the funds, and then getting into some of the details.
Alan?
Thank you, Jim. So I'm confused on the various options. The link that Allison shared has three options, I think, and then you went through, well, you said we're going to be five, and I only heard four. I'm not blaming you, I'm just saying I'm confused. And so I'm not sure what the options are.
I was speaking out of ignorance. So I had not read this document. I was on vacation, last week. I'm still playing catch up.
Same for me, actually. My point isn't to try to drill it down, though, is just try to, I appreciate what Kenny said and having, the getting the mayor and council behind the idea of having money appropriated to whatever we decide we think we want to do, more than just this $320,000, but have it be a replenished fund. So it's 320,000 every year, or $1 million every year, or whatever we decided costs, and have the mayor and council be behind that. And so I would, the process for me would be to have each of these options more clearly defined, and then have a presentation, have meetings set aside to do each option. If it's an hour and a half meeting, have 45 minutes for each option, and do more than maybe however many meetings it takes to get that. And maybe we'd have to meet more often than monthly to accomplish that goal. I'm just making up something, but I would like to see time set aside for each of the options so we could discuss it and see what the impact might be from this. And I agree, whoever said, we need to have measurables is obviously the case. And the one that I'm obviously have an interest in is the right to counsel. And I'm in the process of acquiring data to show what that does. I will also, just jumping ahead, and comment that the city of Phoenix has done a study. I'm sure it was very expensive. I have the study. I can share it with whoever wants to look at it. But one of the conclusions of the study is, for every dollar spent on right to counsel, it achieves $2.58 worth of savings. As happens for many things, it actually saves money to spend it. And so that would be part of the presentation. Can't say for sure that would be the same in Tucson, don't know, but Phoenix and Tucson are pretty similar in many respects. So that's what I would like to see, to summarize my ideas, that have each of the options more clearly defined, and have some mechanism to discuss each of the options in a meeting.
I'm just jumping in real quick. Sorry, Ray. To be clear, those are the three options that, just kind of based on what HCD staff had been hearing, or had been discussed. You all can decide to add D and E option, and then ask for information to discuss those as well.
Thank you for that clarification. That was exactly kind of the train I was on, which is, Kenny, I loved your comment about like innovation. I think Jay as well was talking about that, and of not limiting so early what the options are. So yeah, if we were inviting people to come and share their proposals or something like that, would love something, again, that comes with what are our goals and how are different groups thinking about achieving those goals, given our priorities, and that could include the kind of examples we have as options. But I would love to not have it be quite so narrow.
Okay, so I agree with what Alan said. I think it would be good for us to, I think the city put a lot of work into this document, and I feel guilty for not reading it in advance. But I think it'd be good for us to review this and make sure we're all kind of on the same page of what the the original purpose of the Housing Trust Fund, what it was intended for, because I kind of talk about the three areas where that money was intended to be used, and then the three options that the city has provided, and then we can talk about where we need more information because personally speaking, like the house program, the threshold model, I don't really understand what those are. And so it's hard to make a recommendation because I'm ignorant. And maybe that's what we do is we say, okay, go through this document and say, these are the things we understand. These are the things we need more information about, and use that to establish an agenda for the next meeting or two so that we can all get up to speed and learn what these items are, and we can make an intelligent decision or an intelligent recommendation. Mindy?
I am, I know we were given the ask to, and Jim, thank you, everybody, thank you for keeping your attention on outcomes and following some of the parameters of the city. In consolidating, what I'm hearing is that they're wanting to see prevention. There's I would like to open this up to some free thinking. I've come up with a list of ways to use this $320,000. The ask was given to us quite a few months ago, and I would like to have I want to see as fast a turnaround on allocating these funds so we can get things going and happening now. I'm feeling a little impatient of going through redefining or really understanding. I'm ready for action right now to start discussing how this $324,000 will get dispersed. So I just need to either just sit here and be quiet or see if anybody else is interested in talking about the ideas that they've come up with over these last months preparing for this meeting today. I'm ready. So
I appreciate that, Mindy. I think the key here is how do we build consensus with all the other members? And there's a process that we're going to have to go through to do that so that we can, I mean, I don't know that everybody's going to agree, but at least if we can get a majority of the people to say this is what we think is the best use. Because I'm pretty sure that your ideas are different than Ray's, which is different than Alan's, which is different than mine.
I'd like to make a motion, if we're following Robert's rules, like a motion to open up to hear what people's different ideas are.
Okay. Do we want to do that before we go through the document and see what the city prepared for us, or?
I table my motion.
I'm okay with either way.
I think it'd be good to go through what the city has prepared and then kind of build from there.
Yeah, I do. I definitely want to hear, Mindy. I want to hear your ideas. I want to hear everybody's ideas. We need to get everything on the table. I just think we're thinking about this from a process perspective. And there's a lot of work that went into this document. I think we need to at least make sure that we as a group kind of understand what it says. Does everybody agree with that? Okay.
I do, just to jump in.
Okay. Well, let's start at the top. So I'm on page 2, the proposed programming.
Oh, sorry, you want the proposed programming?
Yeah. So this is what the go up to the second page, if you could, please. I think you're on page. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the original purpose of the Housing Trust Fund was to support affordable housing development, homeownership support, and rental housing support. So the way they defined affordable housing development funding was gap financing for light tech projects, loans and grants for affordable multifamily, single family construction, acquisition and rehab of existing properties to preserve affordability, pre-development funding, infrastructure support. So the target population was obviously the same as the light tech, which is people at or below 80% AMI. And it would be issued through NOFAs, which is a Notice of Funding Availability, in partnership with HCD. So the metrics of success for that were the number of units created or preserved. I think that's the primary one. So home ownership support, which is the second item. The goal is to expand access and provide stability. So any questions on that first item, what that, any of that stuff means? Does everybody understand that?
Can I just
Affordable
ask
housing.
one question about that? Of these were the existing goals. These aren't what we have to do, but these were the goals of the intention, or these are what we have to follow?
This was the goals. This was the goals when the Housing Trust Fund was originally established, is my understanding.
So this is a little bit more of a general program idea that the commission could adopt as like things that they would generally want to fund as within the Housing Trust Fund. So there's sort of two things that we can be talking about. One is the kind of bigger picture of what the Housing Trust Fund, what things are eligible for Housing Trust Fund funding. And then the next question is that like more immediate question is like, what within that larger program are we choosing to fund with the 320,000 that are on the table right now? Does that make sense? So this is the sort of more broad, what would the commission want to see be capable of funding with the Housing Trust Fund?
Any other questions on the first item? Affordable housing development. Okay, second item is home ownership support, which is basically is down payment assistance, or a second mortgage with forgiveness at 10 to 15 years, education and counseling for home buyers, rebates, our green energy rehab upgrades to reduce utility costs, make it a healthier, more sustainable house, and support for the community land trusts. So again, the target population is households earning less than 80% AMI, primarily first-time home buyers from our, some of the minority groups. So this would be administered by nonprofits and coordination with Habitat for Humanity, the land trusts, and other partners. So any questions on the home ownership support?
I have to confess, I don't know what community land trust is. Anybody can define that for us?
Go, Jim. You look like
Well, Maggie, I mean, why don't you'll probably do a better job than me.
So community land trusts are a shared equity model where the land trust owns the land and then home buyers essentially purchase the home on top of that land. So it sort of keeps, it creates an much more affordable home ownership model for low-income home buyers.
Do they actually own the home though, or if they don't own the land, they don't own the home? Or I'm not.
They own the home. The land trust owns the land, and so then when they want to sell the home, they're sort of this, joint transaction. They're sort of all limited in how much then equity they get out of selling the home, but yes, they own the physical home, the land trust owns the land to kind of keep it, maintain affordability.
When it's sold, this land trust sells their ownership also, or the ownership remains with the land trust when it's sold?
It remains with the land trust.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's a way of maintaining affordability from owner to owner.
And who administers the land trust?
The Pima County Community Land Trust is our main land trust in Tucson.
So it's a government agency of a sort?
It's a nonprofit agency.
There are no stupid questions here, guys. So
We all have
any-
different expertise.
yeah, no, this stuff is not obvious at all. So any other questions on this? What this stuff means?
Guess my main question is still if we're limited by these, or if, like for the first one, if it was 80% AMI, could we say we actually want to prioritize under 50% AMI, or do we have to keep it at 80%?
I think you're not limited to what's on this page. What then you decide might be limited by what's feasible, which then would be the conversation that we have moving forward in terms of what do programs look like. But no, you're not limited by what's on this page right now.
So I have another question on this also. The eligible activities, it says soft second mortgages with forgiveness after 10 to 15 years. Yeah, there it is there. Who's the lender on that? Would be private lenders? Would the city be lending money from the Housing Trust Fund? What are we talking about there?
That one I'm not sure about.
It's mysterious to me too. And the part that concerns me a lot is that if it is the city and people default, then the city's foreclosing on people they're trying to help, and that seems kind of ugly.
Well, I know, Alan, when the foreclosure crisis happened, the state of Arizona had a program where if someone was willing to buy a foreclosure, the state of Arizona did a soft second mortgage that was, I think, basically considered like part of the down payment, so that it made buying foreclosures more attractive. I believe the state held that paper, and then, after a certain, I think it was 10 years, that was forgiven. And I think generally those programs, the default rates on those programs are generally very low, but I think your point is well taken. But the idea of a soft second mortgage is a way to make it easier for first-time home buyers in particular to get into housing. So
sounds kind of like a loan modification where they put everything at the back end, and if you do properly, then it's forgiven. But it still requires the homeowner to make the payments properly.
Yep.
I don't think that second mortgage requires monthly payments either. I think it's like a 1% loan that has a lump sum payable at the end of the mortgage period that's usually forgiven.
So that's the meaning of the word soft here, apparently, is you don't really owe it unless you default.
Yeah, I've seen that on different affordable housing projects where like nonprofits can get that soft second loan, which is forgiven after the 10 or 15 year period.
Yeah, but I think you're right, Jim. The principal that you pay back is considerably less. If the soft second is like 20% or whatever, then that part is not part of the principal that you're paying down.
Yeah. No. Okay. Any other questions on the home ownership side? Okay, third item is rental assistance. So enhance affordability and housing stability for renters through direct rental assistance, tenant and property owner services, and prevention efforts. So the eligible activities include emergency rental assistance for up to 6 months, subsidies to support households who have barriers to obtaining stable housing, funding for landlord-tenant mediation and eviction prevention, grants for energy efficiency and weatherization and affordable rental units, property owner and housing provider landlord capacity and support building, supportive services for high need populations, so case management, workforce development. So this is primarily for renters at or below 60% AMI with priorities for those at 30% AMI and below. With individuals and families who are at risk of eviction or homelessness, survivors of domestic violence, youth aging out of foster care, and people exiting institutions, affordable housing property owners and management companies. So this will be managed in coordination with HCD and the partnerships with Pima County Eviction Prevention Legal Services Program, local nonprofits, social service providers, integration with the housing choice vouchers and continuum of care programs. And then the metrics of success would be the number of individuals who are assisted or the number of units that were improved. Any questions on rental assistance?
So my comment is when you mentioned um, funding for landlord-tenant mediation and eviction prevention, the eviction prevention part of this is the right to counsel thing that I have mentioned already. And one thing about I want to just comment again, funding for landlord-tenant mediation. I've understood that the city of Philadelphia somehow, I don't know how, and I don't think you could implement it here, requires before an eviction filed that there be mediation. And that is a very successful program from my understanding. And that's because it turns out that not only is eviction very hard and difficult and expensive on tenants, but it's expensive for landlords also. And so avoiding eviction is good for landlords and for tenants. And if mediation happens, it's more likely that the tenancy will be preserved and the eviction avoided.
Hey,
So I'm gonna have to hop off the meeting early. But just wanted to say again, I do still think we have these metrics and appreciate running through these metrics. And I think as much as we can then really take a serious look at that and see if there's anything that we want to add to that or change to that. And my priorities, yeah, would be really ensuring that people who are the lowest income and assets are benefiting the most, and things that are also tending towards space for innovation too, and adding that. Thank you all.
okay, Ray, are you hopping off then?
I am gonna hop off.
Okay, so before you go,
Mhm.
do you guys have a preference on the frequency of meetings? Like, should we try to is this time work for everybody? Do we want to meet monthly or twice a month?
I think twice a month would be great, and this time would usually work for me. It's a little tighter today, but it's a
Yeah.
fine time.
The only problem, 2 weeks from now, I'm on vacation the 4th, August 4th. Does the 5th work for everybody?
Tuesdays,
August 5th or 4th work for my schedule.
Yeah, I support bi-weekly, so we have some momentum and continuity, and then preference for Tuesdays.
Preference for Tuesdays.
I can do Tuesday afternoons. I'm busy Tuesday mornings, but Tuesday afternoons work on a bi-weekly, I think is a good idea.
Okay. So is everybody good with the next meeting, maybe Tuesday the 5th at 3:00? Is that too late?
I have a standing meeting on that day and that time. However, if it works for the rest of the majority, everybody else, then I can live with not being there.
Well, okay. What about 1:00? Is that better?
On Tuesdays,
Mm-hmm.
I have to be someplace at 3. So 1:00 should be okay.
Allison, does that work for you?
I will be on vacation that whole week, so I'll either figure out staffing it or we'll figure out staffing it.
Okay.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks, Ray.
Jim, that time works for me, and I think definitely two biweekly meetings is a good idea. And before we get past this part, I want to ask a question about the document we were just looking at, but I don't want to deflect from people's schedules right now.
I think we heard from everybody that works. So Kenny said that works. Alan, you said that works. Mindy said it works. Jay said it works. And Ray said it works. So I think we're good on the schedule. So go ahead, Alan.
I just want to have the acronym AMI defined. Is it annual median income? Is that what that means?
No, it's area median
median.
income.
Area median income. And what is the area?
Pima County.
Okay. And I don't know the number for Pima County, but I do know the number for Arizona. A family of four, the median income is about $113,000.
No.
Yes, it is.
No. So the area median income in Phoenix, I think for a family of four is like 65, and I think in Tucson it's about 55,000.
Those aren't the numbers I have access to.
Allison, do you have that information handy? It's on HUD's website, I believe.
Yeah, I'm looking up what we currently have.
I just Googled area median income for Pima County and it's 60, at least it says 67,000.
For a family of four?
Yeah. Well, I think the area median in the median household income is whatever household is defined as. It's not defined as four people. You know, whatever the household size is, which is like what, 2.5 people or something like that. So
the link I just put in the chat is the link says FY 2023, but the actual document was pulled from HUD's website in April of this year. And median family income is listed as 96,000. But right, obviously that depends on, I think that's for the 4-person household. So for a single individual, that'd be about 66,000 a year would be the median income, which then, Alan, the way that we often define low income for affordable housing programs is through various percentages of area median income. So we define like low income as 80% or below, and often, you know, a lot of our programs are geared towards 50% or 30% of area median income. So that would then be the threshold much lower.
Yeah, and then the map dashboard, which Jay just posted, is showing it the same exact information, but this is based off of 2023 versus 2025.
it won't be much.
Yeah, the link says 23, but the actual document is FY 25.
Yeah, the map dashboard is showing the median income, area median income for Tucson is 67,929.
Doesn't define household size, or does it? Because I understand, again, this is Arizona numbers. I don't know area numbers. A single person household in Arizona is about 71,000. So it's pretty close to the same as Tucson.
So for future conversation, we can definitely get the current authoritative Pima County AMI level.
My point in raising this issue isn't to define the numbers much as the numbers are high. They're big numbers. And I appreciate the fact that we're looking at percentages of that number, but they're high. And again, the median income for the state of Arizona for a 4-person household is $113,000, which seems unusually high to me. I'm just shocked by that number, but that's what I have.
Well, I think
Thanks.
I think you're looking at income for married couple families. That's the highest, and then the median household income. The household is defined as whatever the average number of people is in a household, and it's like under 3 people. So I mean, it just kind of depends on what you're looking at, in terms of the data. But I know married couples with children is typically the highest type of income that you're going to find. Because female-headed households with children, if you look at the map dashboard, the median in Tucson is only basically $37,000 a year. So really kind of depends on what type of household makeup you're looking at.
So the other thing that's important to define is housing cost burdened. So, those numbers are all pre-tax, right? So taxes come out of that. And then if a family is considered housing cost burdened, if more than 30%, is it 30 or 35%?
30.
30% of their monthly income goes towards housing costs, which includes either rent or mortgage plus utilities. So just to kind of put a point on that. So say that the average median income for a family of four is $100,000, just to keep the math simple. That would mean if they pay more than $30,000 a year for rent and utilities, which is $2,500 a month, they're housing cost burdened. So when you get down to the 50% AMI, you divide that by 2, that means they can't spend more than $1,250 a month on rent and utilities, which is really hard these days. Okay. Should we go through the 3 options that were recommended by HCD? Start with those.
I wanted to chime in really quickly. I think it makes to me, it makes sense that, the Housing Trust Fund kind of holds all these different programs, right? There's support for development, homeowners, as well as renters. And in thinking about, shaping the principles or the contours of our recommendations, um, it would make sense to me to find some way like related to each of those areas, a mechanism for replenishing the fund. If let's say something for homeowners that's got support written in through document recording fees, or in lieu fees for housing development, just finding a way to link the areas of support and uses of the funds with the mechanisms. So it's kind of comprehensive in that way, that there's support all around, and uses all around, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would argue again for like a fourth category of like, innovation, grassroots ideas, whatever we want to term it, that could fit into any of these 3 categories of uses. But that is explicitly called out to say that here's where the new ideas can come in.
Okay. Kenny, so I don't know, you need to answer this now. Maybe we loop back to this, but I don't really understand what innovation means from a housing perspective. So, what does that mean from your perspective? Who receives the money? What are they going to do with it?
Yeah, and I think it's to leave the opening for different kinds of proposals, right? What when we get into the details of the proposed programs, like the house program, being one that is kind of coming from the community, looking for funding support or Ward 3's requests to the full commission, that there would be some way to access more flexible funding that's responsive and could lead the way in demonstrating different possibilities from the programs that we know exist, right? The LIHTC program, gap financing, emergency rental assistance. I think we need to build in ways that we can imagine different kinds of support and be responsive to our broader community. So it could be new groups, that want to propose a program or conducting a program in a new way, or providing different kinds of assistance.
I'll just maybe suggest, Kenny, like I think there also might be ways to add that the Housing Trust Fund's priority under each of those categories too is innovation, given that it's like a more flexible funding source than some of the more traditional things. Or I'm just proposing thoughts, right, saying overall the idea is sort of flexible funding that can support things that normally wouldn't be funded in other ways. But for instance, like house, I think fits under the rental assistance bucket as it currently exists. So yeah, just another option. Like it could be sort of traditional programming under each of those buckets and a fourth bucket of innovation, or kind of integrate that y'all's preference for all of these is that it kind of focuses on innovative projects that would otherwise struggle to find funding.
Well, let's start with option A. I think we've got about 25 minutes left here. So option A is the rental assistance and eviction prevention. Recommendation is to put 150,000 for emergency rental assistance, 50,000 to the house program, 75,000 to case management and program admin, 45,000 to tenant outreach, education, legal services, and mediation. So can we just kind of go through each of these bullet points? Allison, I think I'm going to ask some ignorant questions here, just to try to better understand what the impact is of these dollars. So when we say $150,000 for emergency rental assistance, what is a typical, when there's emergency rental assistance, what is a typical ask? I know you can have up to 6 months, but like how many people do you think that would help? Is that helping 10 or 100?
So, and I don't have like Keith Bentley's presentation memorized, but my recollection of the continuum of care, TPCH has had some flexible philanthropic funding for this purpose, and to be honest, that it funds a greater range of barriers than just rental assistance. There's, I think, paying back utilities, things like that, that the funds can be used for to kind of stabilize someone in their housing. My recollection is that it sort of averaged about $1,000 or $1,200 per payout, and so just rounding, 100 to 150 households over the course of that funding bucket.
Okay.
And I think in terms of what you guys are thinking about it for a process, if you wanted to then sort of dedicate 45 minutes of a meeting to understand this, I can bring in the actual data of what each of these, of our understanding of what each of these would support.
Well, let's kind of go through the uses of the funds, and then we can loop back and decide where we need more information.
Okay.
Okay, so the second item was the house program, $50,000. And I don't know what the house program is. Can you explain that?
So it's still definitely a work in progress, but it's a proposal by Ward 2 Councilmember Cunningham to support low-income households who have some income but are still struggling to make that first and last month deposit to get into a housing unit. So the idea is that it would support people who don't otherwise have rental assistance, and partner with landlords to kind of be flexible in some of their onboarding requirements for these households. So it's some of that funding. The funding would kind of provide the landlords a guarantee of income if needed, and sort of mitigate their risk, as they typically maybe wouldn't say no to a household.
So that'd be like first and last month's rent or something like that?
Yeah.
So that's probably going to be closer to $3,000 average per person, would you say?
Probably. I think the idea here is that it's a little bit of a revolving fund, where if, for instance, guaranteeing a certain amount of damages or paying out someone's lease if needed. And so in theory, some of the funds wouldn't necessarily be spent if the tenant landlord relationship goes well, is the way I understand it.
Mindy, do you have a question?
Question kind of statement. There was a man who came, there was somebody who did a presentation for us about a program that they're running to negotiate with, and I don't know if this is a false memory or not, so I'm bringing it up to all of you, where they would negotiate with the landlord to bring in somebody who was homeless and pay first, last month security deposit or utility costs, and guarantee that if there was any damage to the apartment, that they would pay for that damage. Does this sound familiar to anybody?
So I think that I think what the commission has heard is that type of program in reference to this house program.
Okay.
There is right, the option B is also kind of a similar model, but for folks who are receiving housing subsidies through homeless service providers. So there's multiple different options of how that program can work. But the house program in particular is the Ward 2 program to support folks that don't have rental assistance.
Okay, any other questions on the house program?
That was it.
All right, so the third item there is 75,000 for case management and program admin. So let's talk about that. What does that mean in your head, Allison?
Again, I don't know. I don't have all the details, but I think right here there is some, for instance, community safety, health, and wellness is a program at the city that kind of does housing navigation and coordination. So they don't necessarily have their own bucket of rental assistance, but their navigators help people who call in to access services. And we know that's a big need. So kind of additional housing navigation, case management support, and program administration, right? If we were going to contract with someone to provide emergency rental assistance, what the city and county did during the pandemic with our emergency rental assistance program is worked with CIC, the Community Investment Corporation, to actually give out those payments. And so they do charge a certain amount of money upfront to just be that admin. And we also, HCD has admin staff. So I think the idea is to kind of cover some of those costs of just administering a program.
Okay, so the majority of that money would go to HCD?
Not necessarily, right? With CIC, right? If we were administering rental assistance payments, they charge an admin fee. And then again, the kind of case management services are things like our community safety, health, and wellness program that do that kind of navigation support on our 311 community assistance line.
Do we have any questions on that line item, what that is? I'm still a little bit fuzzy on it, but
I think it is fuzzy. It is.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it just sounds like, you know, if we're going to start trying to get this money out the door, we're going to have to pay for the admin costs associated with it, whatever those may be. You know, it's not going to, the money's not going to get itself out the door.
My takeaway is that for instance, $150,000 of emergency rental assistance wouldn't include case management and program administration. There'd be additional costs on top of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's to support the other two programs. Okay, and then the last item is tenant outreach, education, legal services, and mediation.
So I think, again, sort of some of the additional services that end up being helpful for distributing funding.
This might be a question for Alan, but when mediation and legal services, what does that typically run for an individual?
How much does it cost?
Average? Yeah, what's an average?
Well, I don't have an answer to that because anybody who is being sued for eviction, just really typically, I don't have any numbers, but I'd say well over 90% of them, if they're not affording their rent, they can't afford lawyers. So there's almost nobody hiring lawyers to pay for an eviction defense. So there isn't anything like that. But I guess if I were a private lawyer and were going to hire myself with my expertise that I now have, you know, $1,500 maybe, $2,000, somewhere in there.
Okay. So if this went strictly to legal services and mediation, that would be the 45,000. You'd say probably help about 20.
Well, here's another way to look at it. We're a nonprofit law firm, and we operate on grant funding. And one of our grants is, you know, EALS, Emergency Eviction Legal Services, which is mentioned in this document. And they pay us a lump sum, $1,500 each time we go to court for a case. Whether or not it takes that much money or takes more, we get $1,500.
Okay.
So that money comes from EALS.
Okay. Any questions on that last bucket?
I do.
Yeah, Mindy?
Just curious, Alan, about what the cost of a position with you would be.
Cost of what? I'm sorry?
If you were to hire another position?
What it costs, what the salary is for a lawyer here? Is that what you mean?
Correct.
So it depends on years of experience, but a new lawyer out of law school right now, 58,000.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
All right. So you guys ready to move on to option B? So mimic the Maricopa County's threshold program, just create an infrastructure pilot model after Pima County's threshold program, a centralized landlord engagement liaison service currently exclusive to their Maricopa region. Threshold serves tenant-based rental assistance programs using their innovative approach. Okay, so the first is 125,000 for development or adaptation of the threshold model. So that's basically, that would be money to establish the program. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so the kind of main components of the threshold model, the kind of centralized landlord engagement, is essentially centralized staff that can work with and recruit landlords into the program to essentially partner to provide housing to folks who have this rental assistance.
Does Maricopa County's threshold program have a recurring source of revenue?
It does now, yeah. It used ARPA funds to get started, and now is using Maricopa County funds.
So if we did that here, would we be able to establish a recurring source?
I think the idea would be establishing kind of showing success of the program in order to find funding in the future, right? I think there are options, including T-CHIP moving forward. It just didn't work out in this in this round of the city's BCHIP funding. So that would be the idea, is kind of showing the need and showing the program successes to find long-term funding.
So I have a question about this. So I get the idea of creating, a service where, there's reaching out to landlords to try and get them to participate. But what is it exactly that the landlords are participating in? And I heard mention of people that have funding already and need to use the funding. So are these people that have housing choice vouchers, or what assistance are people using that they're trying to connect landlords with?
So the main thing that Threshold does in Maricopa County is work with clients who are receiving permanent supportive housing funding. So those who are exiting homelessness and have, it's not technically a voucher, but it's tenant-based rental assistance, along with supportive services. So that's what the permanent supportive housing funding is, through our continuum of care. And it can be, it's hard just with regular housing choice vouchers, but it's additionally hard with this funding source to find landlords that are willing to work with the program, and who are also willing to honestly to also have incentives that further incentivize landlords to work with the program, and sometimes waive even some of their typical requirements that might be barriers to those clients achieving housing.
Do we know how big a difference or challenge it is, Maricopa compared to Pima County, in terms of the difficulty to get landlords to work with these types of clients? I know it's always hard, but is it harder in Maricopa County than it is here?
I'd have to ask someone who can kind of compare a little bit better. And it's also a little bit apples to oranges at this point, since Maricopa has the Threshold program and Pima County doesn't. I did just want to highlight, right, one of the main ideas here is the search time that it takes for someone who, right, say you have funding, you've been matched with your service provider, the amount of time it takes to get that person into housing can be many days. And so Threshold was able to reduce that by 29 days. So almost a full month of time experiencing homelessness and getting someone straight into housing.
Any other discussions on the Threshold program?
I know we just have a couple minutes left, so I don't want to belabor the point, but I actually don't really understand what the Threshold program is.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I agree. So Alan, I think if at the end of this, I was going to see if maybe we could try to get presentations on both the Threshold model and the house program. And then maybe we ask for somebody to present from us on the emergency rental assistance that shows kind of, more detail on how each of these programs occurs. Because if you go down to option 3, it's a hybrid of the two, right? Which is emergency rental assistance, house program, and Threshold.
Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
So the second item under option B is $100,000 allocated to providing $2,500 per household serving needing incentives and risk mitigation funds. So this would help 40 individuals. What does this mean? Households served needing incentives and risk mitigation funds.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where you are.
So I'm option B, second item.
Okay, sorry.
There you go. You just pass it. Go back down. There you go. Use of funds.
Okay.
Second item.
So, right, the Threshold program is is twofold. One is the landlord engagement, so a kind of liaison who's recruiting landlords to engage with the continuum of care rental assistance program, and then two is incentives and risk mitigation funds. So it's incentives to those landlords to participate in the program. It's things like holding fees is what we call them in Pima County, right? A landlord could rent on the private market tomorrow, but we need them to hold the unit to be able to pass inspection and kind of get all of the paperwork situated. Also risk mitigation funds. Things often landlords don't want to rent to our clients because they think they're going to trash the unit, and sometimes there is damage, and so funds to help pay for a certain amount of damages if they occur are another kind of, they help mitigate the risk on the landlord side.
So these are the funds used when implementing the threshold model.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Paying
Jay?
for the landlord engagement and then paying for the kind of incentive funding.
Got it.
And the third part is paying for the technology. Sorry, Jay.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, I would definitely like to get more information about the programs like we've talked about. But for me, you know, the two main differences here that we're talking about is threshold is trying to get people housed who are basically unhoused, or at least in that boat, more or less, broadly speaking. And the rental assistance that we were talking about first is helping people who are already housed to not lose their housing by paying for rent or whatever the case may be. So I think that's the way that I am thinking about them at this point, without having a whole lot more detail about how either one works. You know, I keep wondering if we're going to like talk about some of this stuff, but I think we're just kind of going through the bullet points at this point. So I'll hold off for now. So I have some thoughts about them.
Yeah. Okay, and then the third bullet point here, the 95,000 technology, pad mission, and program administration to set up a program. How's that different from the 125?
Good question. So the technology itself is developed by Home Inc., which is currently working with the Threshold program in Maricopa County, and that's sort of a it's essentially, they often call it Zillow for rental assistance. So it's a way of sort of tracking openings with participating landlords to kind of additionally streamline the process. So that part is really kind of paying for the technology itself and administering that technology and getting it set up.
Okay. Okay, so just in terms of time here, guys, we're getting short. I think option C is basically a combination of the first two options, where you have 120,000 for emergency rentals assistance, 50,000 for the house program, and then 150,000 for the core elements of establishing the threshold landlord engagement model. So personally speaking, I think for the next meeting, if it's possible, and Allison, maybe you can help us with this. Mm-hmm. But I would be interested in getting more information on emergency rental assistance, the house program, and the threshold model. If there's a way to do a 15 to 20-minute presentation on each of those where we could ask questions, really get a better understanding of what those programs are, what the impact is going to be, you know, and then I think we can all speak intelligently about it. Does everybody agree with that?
I think that makes sense, Jim. The only thing that I've kind of been holding off on, but just want to throw out there is, again, I've mentioned this a few times now, but please look at Keith Bentley's, at the very least, look at his PowerPoint presentation. He and his team have done a ton of research about what's happening now in Pima County and what the most urgent needs are. And there are two things. One is rental assistance to keep people in their homes, and the other one is coordinating the services that are available. That's a huge problem. People don't know where to go. It's very uncoordinated. And I just want to put out there that I think putting, you know, whether it's 50,000, 75,000, something like that, for 1 year for somebody to coordinate all of the programs so that there's one central location. I think that's just going to be critical. And I think it's a lot of bang for the buck. It, you know, makes the things that we do have, which are limited, more available and more easily accessible. So I just wanted to throw those things out there because, you know, again, Keith has really done a lot of research about what's happening right now and what's needed.
Would that be done through TCPH?
I don't know. I mean, I think we would need to dig into that, you know, like who would be the coordinating body, you know, whether TPCH has the, you know, organizational infrastructure to do that, or if it's, you know, another agency. You know, I think a lot of that is kind of in the weeds at this point. I don't know.
Kenny?
Glad we're all on the same page from the programs. I guess I'm curious for the next meeting too, if we could get more information on the recurring revenue options. It's like the last couple pages of the document. And if our city folks might be able to help us understand what are some of the like revolving loan programs that are working that the city administers, how applicable they might be towards the trust fund. I feel like as we're making decisions about which programs to support, we really do need to make strong links for how to replenish the fund too. And so, you know, it's not to make more conditions on what the you know what the funding can be used for, but I think if the more that we can encourage that forethought, um, it'll pay off in the long run, and I think in my mind makes the case for um, supporting a range of programs through the fund trust fund, and yeah, calling out innovation separately from those, even though that those programs may support, you know, any one of these three areas.
Okay, I'm taking some notes here. Jay, what was that presentation you mentioned?
Keith Bentley did the presentation to the Equitable Housing Strategies Subcommittee, and I believe Allison or HCD has gotten out the presentation itself, and also Keith's presentation was like basically our whole hour-and-a-half subcommittee meeting in June, I think. So you can go back and watch Keith do the whole presentation. It's quite comprehensive and well done.
And I can make sure the same way that I sent out kind of an email with links to materials, I can do the same thing for the upcoming meeting.
Okay, Alan?
So I do want to make sure everybody understands. I'd like to include at some point before we make a decision on what our recommendation is going to be to the full commission, that I have opportunity to present my views on the right to counsel and the impact that would have. And I'm mindful as I say that eviction prevention is something that the city itself has mentioned in the mayor and council meeting, is something that they want to accomplish. And right to counsel directly goes towards preventing evictions. So I would like opportunity at some point to make that presentation myself, or maybe have Drew Schaefer come back and he would do it if he has time and interest.
Okay, Mindy?
Thanks, Jim. I know that there's much work to be done in setting out all of the policy for moving forward with housing trust funding. I personally am feeling every day that goes by where that $324 has not been allocated to help people is it's a pain in my heart. And I'm hoping that we don't have to be ready with all the presentation on moving forward with housing trust funding and how that's going to happen, and that we move some conversation quickly into allocating the 324 and then working on some of the policy. Does this make sense to any of you?
Yeah. Okay, so our next meeting is in 2 weeks. We've got 6 agenda items that have been brought forth. So the first is a presentation on the rental assistance. Second is a presentation on the house model of the house program. Third is on the threshold model. Fourth is the Keith Bentley presentation. Fifth is the recurring revenue options, which is more long-term. And the fifth is the legal support presentation. Kenny, if you're okay with it, I guess, I don't know that we can get through all those in one meeting. I think the recurring revenue options is that is probably the most difficult of all the topics, but I think it's also the most important. But I would like to try to get through the other five, I guess, first, so we can make a tactical recommendation on the $320,000. And then maybe we, as a follow-up, we talk about, long-term. I think that long-term revenue options is also kind of tied to the threshold model, because that only makes sense if we can find a long-term source. So how should, Allison, do you want to help try to identify people that can present on these?
Yep. Yeah, I can do that.
I think, Alan, my understanding is you want to be the presenter on the legal support, correct?
Yes, me or Drew Schaefer or someone from MIJ. Yes.
And then Jay, do you think Keith Bentley, or we could get an abridged 15 to 20-minute presentation from them on the database services available, or?
I obviously can't speak for Keith, but if you look at the slide deck, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, 10, 15 minutes, it's, I think you can get a pretty good idea. We could probably get Keith to come back though, and, give an abridged presentation, although we tried to give an abridged presentation, and we really went hour and 15 minutes probably, because there's so much to it. So
do you think folks, I guess the question is if Jim, Alan, Kenny, and Mindy would be willing to watch that discussion as homework?
I was present for it to begin with, but I would be happy to do that again.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Alan, you were already there. You got it.
I've watched most of it.
And I have the study too. He, because he gave it to us then, and you're going to send it out again, but I have it.
Okay, great.
So
maybe it's just a 10-minute just debrief conversation amongst.
Okay.
Allison, send that link out again to all of us so it's not lost in the rest of everything.
Yeah, I'll maybe send it as its own email so you can search for it.
Okay, so we have some homework. Kenny?
Yeah, maybe a couple quick information requests. One is for some of the proposed programs, had there already been identified funding sources for them, and where that would have been, or if they were relying on the Housing Trust Fund, or what proportion to get that off the ground. And then for the trust fund generally, I think you had shared it's being funded through the Gadsden Development Agreement and some other sources. I'm curious how much potential infusion of funding would come from those agreements. So, if we're
any future potential funding, or if it's essentially nothing. Okay. Yep.
Right.
Well, the Gadsden Group is getting indicted federally on some criminal charges. I wouldn't count on anything coming back from those guys.
maybe we can get the judge to throw a couple $100,000 our way in the settlement, whatever that is.
Oh, that is a crazy situation if you guys haven't heard about it.
I haven't heard about it. It sounds messy as hell. I didn't know about that at all.
Oh, yeah. If you do a search on Gadsden on Google, you'll see about 15 different articles about it. All right. So we've got four. I guess what we've boiled it down to is we're going to try to get through 4 presentations at our next meeting. So we have for those of us who hadn't seen the Keith Bentley presentation, we have a homework assignment to watch that. And then Allison, I'll talk to you maybe offline about it if we can get presenters on the other 3. And Alan, you've got the legal support. Does that sound like a plan?
Yes.
Sounds good to me.
All right, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate everybody jumping on.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
A good week.
Thanks.